friend of the program, Dan Orlovsky, getting a shout-out from Mike Tirico almost damn near on the spot when Jimmy Garropolo stepped out of the end zone and created his own safety. And when that moment happened, I thought to myself, and Orlovsky's getting a shout-out, I thought, you know that GIF of Leonardo DiCaprio from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where he's pointing at the screen? Like, oh, God, I see that. I recognize that.
Rick Dalton.
That's what I thought. I thought he had to be Rick Dalton wherever he was watching the game. Like, oh. And then sure enough, I'm thinking that, and in comes the tweet, all caps, from Dan Orlovsky. I've never been happier. Freedom, like he's William Wallace, okay? Tweeting that out. So the Rich Eisen Show booking crew knows that this man is what I call an anytime guest. Doesn't matter. Anytime he's free and willing to come on, we'll have him. And sure enough, today's that day. Perfectly timed on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line from the worldwide leader in sports, the great Dan Orlovsky. How you doing, Dan?
I'm better after that. I'm better after. So for clarity, it was 2 seconds. It was actually literally 2 seconds from the moment Jimmy's back foot hit till Tirico uttered the words. You guys remember Dan Orlovsky doing that? So it was hilarious, man. It was a quick memory moment for him.
So I know. Well, I mean, that's Tirico doing Tirico things. So where were you? Where were you watching this thing, and how quickly did you grab your phone to send that tweet, Dan?
Yeah, true story here. So I'm sitting outside. We have like a covered kind of fireplace television area out in the back of our house. So I was actually outside all day watching games, and then at night I was watching Sunday Night Football, but also watching some tape. And my kids had some friends sleep over, so they were inside watching, I think, like the new Jungle Cruise or whatever. So play happens, and immediately I jump off the couch and run inside. My wife was inside with our kids watching the movie. I'm like, babe, and she's like, what? And I'm like, you got to come outside right now. And she's like, what? And I was like, babe, Jimmy Garropolo just stepped out of the end zone. I'm not alone anymore. And she came run out. She's like, what? She like held up her cell phone to videotape the television. And I was like, no, it already happened. And they were doing replay after replay. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And that's when I fired off the tweet too. So I was awkwardly excited.
You're not alone anymore. Although, I mean, that Jimmy Garropolo stepping out, Dan, was actually to his and the team's benefit because he threw a pick six. So that saved 4 points. What happened with your throw? That one I didn't know. What was the result of your play?
Yeah, you know the result because I actually never threw the ball because it took me way longer than Jimmy to realize. Well, Jimmy didn't even realize that he wasn't out of bounds technically because he obviously made the throw.
Yes.
I actually never threw the ball. And I've had many people come up to me like, you know what, man, kind of a smart play, because if you sack fumble and they recover, it's a touchdown. So, and I look at him like, guys, one, I'm not that smart. Two, you're an idiot for thinking I did that on purpose.
Dan Orlovsky here on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, let's get to the football. Which team is operating the best right now, beautifully, where you're watching on tape, you're watching on film, and it's just like this. You're just nodding your head the entire time, going, "Oh, baby." Which one is that?
It's Philadelphia. It's Philadelphia, and I'm not surprised by the way they're doing it offensively. I am a little bit surprised by the way they're doing it defensively. So offensively, the way I'll put it, Rich, is they're the 2021 Rams offensively.
Wow.
The Rams were so good last year out of empty, no backs in the backfield, 5 guys blocking, because, one, the quarterback was really good at figuring out who to throw the ball to, and you just couldn't match up against them. When it came to Cooper and when it came to Higbee and when it came to the addition of Odell and Van Jett, they had so many of these guys. Right now, Jalen Hurts out of empty is 14 of 16 for 200 yards. He has a QBR of 98 out of empty. And kind of the hard part when they get into empty is you got to be big enough, skilled enough, strong enough, and fast enough. You got to be big enough to go, can we cover AJ one-on-one? Are we strong enough or skilled enough to cover Davante Smith one-on-one? Are we strong enough to cover Dallas Goedert one-on-one? And then are we fast enough to cover Quez Watkins one-on-one? Not a lot of teams can. And you can't play them in man much because what I just said. And then you can't play them in zone when they're in it really because the offensive line is too good. You won't get to the quarterback, And so they are doing such a good job of building their offense around that formation grouping. Jalen has gotten so much better throwing the ball downfield. Last year he couldn't. This year, that go route he threw to Davante is literally perfect. But defensively, man, their defensive line right now, and that's what's been missing out of that kind of defensive unit the last 3 years. The defensive line hasn't been dominant. Right now, their defensive line is playing dominant football.
And I know we're marathoning and not sprinting, but so you think the Eagles are viable for a long-term Super Bowl threat?
Oh, yeah, they're real. They're real. I felt that way going into the year. That's why I picked them to win the division.
Mm-hmm.
But they're real. If that defensive line stays healthy, yeah, they can go with anyone.
Okay. And the Miami Dolphins, Dan Orlovsky, what are you seeing from them? We had Andrew Hawkins in studio last week, and he told a story about Mike McDaniel being his position coach back in Cleveland in 2013, teaching him techniques about how to get off the line and how it was counterintuitive to what defenses are going to do, and it worked like a charm every single time. And I'm wondering what you're seeing on film that's a similar story from McDaniel.
Yeah, so number one, Mike is very game plan specific.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see a lot of the stuff from last game that you see in the next game, so to speak. He very much so figures out, okay, what is the defense? He always starts with this: can we block them? Everything is about can we block them. Like if you watched Buffalo against Miami this past weekend,
yes,
I would tell you, listen, if Miami can't block the front four, I don't care who's playing corner. They have no shots. Tua threw the ball 18 times. 9 out of those 18 times, they had 7-man protection going. So it was, hey, your front four ain't going to beat us. We're not going to lose this game because players like Von Miller and Greg Rousseau dominated the game. So brilliant by that. Number two, he's constantly changing what he gives you pre-snap to post-snap. It's constant. I force you to communicate. And not only you to communicate, but the communication that comes from you on the defense has got to go to everybody, right? So I always say this, man. Offensive people, Mike is doing this. I don't need everybody to be wrong. I need one guy to be wrong. And as long as one guy's wrong, I win. So he's doing a really good job of changing that picture, pre-snap to post-snap to a defense. Balls coming out of Tua's hand quickly, certainly did this past week. He's allowing those receivers, Jalen and Tyreek, what does everyone say? Well, they're fast. He makes sure that they are allowed to be fast. That goes back to cutting of the splits. Andrew's talking about the releases. I was talking about this with Chad Hall, actually, who's the wide receiver coach at Buffalo. I said, what's the most important thing? If you could coach one thing to receivers, one thing, what would it be? And he said, get off the line of scrimmage. Releases, it's everything. And if you're watching the way that they condense splits or they use their motion and allow these guys to be full speed when the ball's getting snapped, they're doing an incredible job, man.
Dan Orlovsky here on the Rich Eisen Show. I mean, we just talked about the Dolphins and then obviously the Eagles. Those are the two remaining undefeated teams. And, I just can't shake the feeling here that it still doesn't matter. It's the Bills world and we're all just paying rent in it. You saw them in week 2, by the way, great call that you guys had of that Monday night game. What can you tell? Are you counseling me to get off of that opinion or what?
No. The Bills are still the best team and the team to beat in the whole NFL. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just going back to Miami briefly, the fumble snap before the half is not going to happen again. The Josh missing on 4th down, not going to happen again. The missed field goal won't happen again. They're playing without 4 starters on defense and 2 starters on offense. That's sometimes, I sat there on Monday morning, we're all sitting here going, listen, I love the fact that the Dolphins are playing well and really good in 3-0, and they are absolutely a contender in the AFC. But we have to contextualize things. If that's like we were talking about Green Bay after week 1, and everyone was like, yeah, their offense. Yeah, guys, they play without their number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 wide receivers. They're starting left tackle, starting right tackle. Of course they weren't going to play that well. So, no, Buffalo, I tell you this, offensively, Ken Dorsey, their new play caller, is doing 2 really good things. One, they want to at least have the peace of mind to run the football. So if they need to, they can. And if they can, the impact it'll have on their passing game. And then number 2, moving Stephon around different places instead of keeping him stationary to give him so many different options. Last week, I really candidly thought Miami did a great job of saying, here comes all-out pressure early in the first half, and then they gave you all-out pressure looks and faked it or bluffed it, and that was really good by Miami. It's not a knock on Buffalo. It's just good by Miami. And then for Buffalo defensively, man, Listen, having that secondary beat up the way that they were last week, it played into Miami's favor. I don't anticipate that secondary to be as unhealthy when it matters the most as they were this past weekend.
And they brought Xavier Rhodes in for a little bit of a look-see today. We'll see what happens moving on from there. Dan Orlovsky from the worldwide leader in sports, NFL Live, college football, so much more. A few more minutes left with him here on the Rich Eisen Show. And Dan, your career so taken off like a rocket ship, and you're terrific at what you do. And I could see one of the things that you like to do is make people smarter and then put out what you believe on screen, and so be it. But I think you'll also agree with what I'm saying. I'm similar in that respect. I also want to be right. My God, I hate being wrong. And I had the Raiders winning this division. They're 0-3, and it's gnawing at me. It's really troubling to me. So I ask you a general question: what the hell's wrong with the Raiders? What's going on with them? Dan?
Yeah. So I'll hit on the first thing too, because I agree. I hate being wrong.
Yes.
I love being right. I'm okay with being wrong though, because that makes me feel like Rich. Like if I'm okay being wrong, I'll strain to be right.
Attaboy.
I'll strain and try to find out a way. So.
Attaboy.
Here's what's going on with the Raiders, and we're actually doing this on live today.
Okay.
Week one, it seemed like this conscious effort to get 17, Davante Adams the ball.
Yes.
Rightfully so. Derek turns the ball over a couple of times, likely the reason they lose that football game. Some forced interceptions. Two of those were not to Davante, though. So all right, first game of the year, Derek didn't play great. And then you go on the road and you're handling Arizona, and the game falls apart. And you start – they really stopped featuring Davante a little bit in that second half of that game. And then this past weekend was the most shocking one to me. And again, I don't ever say anything that I don't believe. I don't ever try to stir up controversy. I literally try to do my job better than anybody. Watching this past weekend, it looks like Derek Carr is purposely not looking at Davante Adams. That's what the tape says. There's 5 examples of it where, and the way I'm going to say it is this. If we just took X's and O's, right? These guys don't have reputation and/or resumes, and you had an offensive play call and a defensive play call. The defense is this, and you sit there and say, well, this play that I have, the route concept to my left stinks versus that defense. But I know I've got the route concept to my right is really good versus that defense. I don't care who those people are. It's just the defensive structure, the X's and O's. Well, I'm going to throw the ball to my right, naturally, because the play to my left stinks. It's the worst possible coverage for that play. 5 times this past weekend. He's looking to the side of the worst possible concept versus the defense, and Davante is actually in the best possible side, and he won't look there.
So
He's
why?
not looking there.
Why?
I don't know. And I don't know if that's a thing, but I know a guy who's played as much football as Derek Carr and as smart as Derek Carr and sees the field relatively as well as Derek Carr. And I've watched him operate these plays all day long. I mean, and you can sit here and say, well, Dan, you don't know what he's getting taught. Yes, I do. I've run those plays 4 billion times. The high schools are running these plays. They're going to get taught the same way. So it literally, the tape tells me you're consciously, like in your mind, saying, I can't force it to Davante, that you're going so far out of your way to not look at him.
Well, it's time to force it to him, don't you think? I mean, let's go. I mean, what they've been supposedly waiting to play with each other since college, and it's now time to happen.
Rich, these are moments where you're not even forcing it to him. These are moments when you're saying, "Oh, the ball has to go there." Even if it was me at wideout, I got to throw the ball there because that's the person that's going to be open given the defensive structure. This isn't even a forcing the ball to him. That's why I'm saying it's purposeful that you're not looking there, or at least it looks that way. So. It's very odd, man. It is very odd.
Dan, you're the best. Really appreciate it. Send my best to everybody there. Did you get a text from Compton? Because I saw that on Twitter.
I did.
What did he say?
I did.
What did he say?
And this would be the correspondence that I'll share with you.
Okay.
He said, hey, man, ask him why he won't make the trip to Nashville to come on the bus. And then when he mentions that we don't have a motor and it doesn't run, just say, because it doesn't have a motor doesn't mean it's not safe, Rich. That's why I don't like when people say all bad guys are dangerous or all bald guys are dangerous. You're a perfect example, Rich.
Wow.
Like, just because you don't have hair doesn't mean you're a dangerous guy.
It looks like I'm going to have to take him on a walk. I think.
Take him on a walk.
I think I'm going to have to take Will on another walk. Just so you're aware, it's got nothing to do with a safety concern at all. It's got to do with a branding concern. You can't brand a bus the way that they're branding it without a motor. And plus, they schlepped that thing all the way to Nebraska and Wisconsin. Just keep going. Come to Los Angeles. And I did attempt to come out to Nashville this summer. Didn't work. The date didn't work for them. How does that sound? I'm giving you an exclusive, Dan.
Yeah, I mean,
how does that sound? We're going on a walk.
If they wanted you that bad, you make it work, right? You find a way. You go out of your way to appeal to the person that you're asking their time for. I would be on your side on that one.
Thank you, Dan Orlovsky. I greatly appreciate it. You're the man.
He hasn't asked me to be on a show in a year, so I'm not even I'm a bottom feeder to him. You know?
Oh, my gosh. Best to your family, man. You got a lot going on a Sunday. Dad's out watching football in the backyard. Jungle Cruise is going on inside. You got a lot happening. It's
not a quiet house, but it's one I'm very blessed to be a part of, man.
Well, congrats. You deserve it. Let's do this more often. Always look for my call,
yes,
Dan.
Sir.
Always.
You're the man, bud.
Right back at you. Dan Orlovsky, everybody. I follow him on Twitter. You should as well. He sounded like he was free, more free. Now that he has his freedom. We're not alone, babe. That's what he told his wife. I'm not alone anymore. Lonely man stepping out of bounds in front of the entire National Football League world.